So, what are we doing today? The black GPZ failed its MOT, TÜV, whatever you want to call it, because the main thing was the chain in the sprocket is worn. And how did he check that? Well, I did check the play on the chain before I drove there, and it was within tolerances, but if you can pull the chain off the sprocket, which I can do here, it's only a little bit, then it has to be changed, according to the tester anyway. Seeing as he's the one who's going to give me another stamp in the book, I've got to do it. And he did notice that my rear tyre is actually getting a bit close to the tread wear indicator. So although that was only an advisory, seeing as I'm going to have the tyre out anyway, and it's been driven flat anyway, so I've got to have the wheel out to do the chain. So I have a chain on order and a tyre on order. Interestingly enough, this is a Battlax BT45. And here in Germany you can only drive pairs, so I have obviously a BT45 at the front as well. But they don't do the 45s anymore, so I've had to get a BT46. It's the new tyre from Bridgestone, so I'm looking forward to testing that. However, you are allowed to cross-mix the 45 and the 46, so there'll be a 45 coming off and a 46 going on. So that's what we have today. So first thing to do now is get all this off. So here is the tool lineup to remove the rear wheel and the swing arm, which you need to take out if you're fitting an endless chain, which I am doing. We have a 24 and a 19mm socket, which is for the two wheel nuts on the axle. One is to hold the axle and one is to undo the wheel nut. Then I like to use a 10mm ring socket with a little adapter to get into, where am I? The brake adapter plate screws, because I can't get a socket in there. There's two of those, one up here and one down there, to remove the brake unit. Then I use a mallet and an old extension, no, this is some part of an extension system or something for a socket tool. I use this to drive the axle out. Then I put all of the axle and the spacers onto here so I don't lose the bits. The 10mm swing socket is used for removing the chain guard. Then I have a 12 socket, which I use to release the chain tensioners, and I have a 14mm socket. What do I use the 14mm socket for? I've got it out extra, but I forgot what I use it for. Hold on, let me have a quick peek. Oh yeah, I'll use that afterwards to take the bolts off the rear sprocket. That's what that's for, although I'm not that far yet, but I put the socket there already. So that's the tool lineup to get that lot out. Oh, the sun's coming out. Nice September day. So here we go. So just to show you, I have released the chain tensioner bolts. I left the locking nut where it is to give you a rough idea where to put it when you put it back. So now I will take the nut off. I've undone these on both sides and then I will drive the axle out. As a side note, I like to take a piece of wood and basically just kick it under the tyre. This raises the back wheel slightly so that when the axle does come out, it's not under an immediate amount of pressure. It also releases the chain a little bit because I've kicked the wheel forward. So now I can knock the axle out without the wheel sort of hanging there. It's actually easier when you go in reverse to put it back as well, so you're not trying to hold the wheel and put the axle in at the same time. So just make sure you watch out what order your spaces come out in as well. People have had to put them in backwards, so here we go. Another quick side note, I do find it good practice to put the nuts and bolts in where they belong so you don't lose them. I've taken the chain guard off, but I've put the bolts back in where they belong. That way I can't lose them. It's not always possible, but I find it's a nice way not to lose your nuts and bolts. So I've got my axle out, now I'll take the wheel out. I have the wheel out. I did mention earlier that I like to remove the holding plate from the brake, but it's actually a bit more than you needed to. I didn't take it off in the end because you can just lift the brake upwards to take it off the brake disc. Basically just pull the wheel back, and I like to put my spacers on the axle in the correct direction, obviously, so I know where they are and where they go, so I don't lose those. If you work clean, that's half the mile, isn't it? So the wheel is out. Now I have to remove the caps on the frame, take the swing arm bolt out, pull the swing arm back, and then you can start getting to the chain. Once you have the bolt out, you have to take this cover off here. It's 4 or 5 bolts around. It's an 8mm. I'll show you the tool I use for this job. There we go. So now I have the wheel out. That one's away. I can get the tyre changed on that, and also using my socket, my 14mm socket, I can take these off, but you can take this out so you don't have to wait to have one job done before you do the other one. I can get the tyre done now whilst I'm working and waiting for the chain to be delivered. So that's that. Side note number 327. You now have access to all of the rear bearings. You have this bearing here, and you have 2 wheel bearings, one on each side. So now if you need to or want to, or you're unsure about the state of your wheel bearings, now would be a good time to redo your bearings. So give them a check. If there's any play, just change them. They're not expensive. Don't go to Kawasaki to get your bearings though. Go to your local bearing dealer. Kawasaki take 25 euros in Germany for one of these bearings, and it's one-sided open, so you have to grease it. Or you go to an industrial bearing supplier, like I got these ones from. They're closed race, so don't ever have to deal with greasing them, and they cost I think 7 euros, so under a third, nearly a quarter of the original price. So that's that. So to take the swing arm bolt out, you need a 21mm socket on this side of the swing arm. This is the head of the bolt. The swing arm bolt will actually come out this side because the nut is on this side. That's a 19mm. So obviously I'll be turning it off this side but holding it on that side. And then once you have the nut off, you can drive the swing arm bolt out. Then what you will need to do is obviously release the brakes in. You can either take it off here or take it off here, wherever. I'll probably take it off here because it'll be cleaner. And then you need to undo these 2 bolts, otherwise you can't take it off the rear linkage, because the the whole suspension unit needs to come out so that you can take the swing arm out. So basically what we're doing is we are actually releasing the swing arm bolts and also releasing the rear suspension. And once you have the rear suspension loosened, the swing arm will drop down so far that you can actually drop it down underneath here. So this bolt needs to be undone as well. So I'll take all the nuts and bolts off and then I'll take it from there. Stop. So now all the bolts are out. I have the swing arm axle with its bolt. This is the bottom linkage. It's dropped now so you can't see the bottom linkage from here. And these two bolts are from the dog bones. And basically the whole thing has dropped down so far. I can't do it with one hand, but what you do is you can basically, this moves and I can just take the chain off here and then drop the swing arm down from under the monoshock. So I'll just do that and then I'll get back to you. And there we have it. It just pops down over the shock. Then you have the swing arm out, which obviously you need to do to replace an endless chain. All I have to do now is remove the front cover and take the chain off. And I can imagine what it looks like under there. It's always extremely greasy. So now to get this cover off here, there are these screws here, 8mm screws. What I like to do is I have like a tool I've made. Well, I can't really call it made, but I use this. It's just a hand socket tool with an 8mm socket on there. That lives on there. I never take it off because you need it for quite a few things. So, and then you can get in there lovely with this tool. I like it. Easy as pie. Get to all the screws. So once I have this cover off, I'll get back to you. So we have the cover off. As I suspected, on the inside it's completely gummed up, but that's normal. It's not too bad actually, but when you consider you're greasing the chain all the time, it's got to fly off somewhere, and there it goes. Quite surprised how relatively clean it is in here, to be honest. Something I'd like to show you, this is your gear selector. And some people say that theirs are really wobbly. Now, mine wobbles this much, which, as you can see, trying to hold the camera still and wobble it, isn't that much. So if you've got more than that, then either the bearing inside there is worn or something's gone. But it shouldn't be wobbling around like a pencil in a milk bottle. But it does wobble a little bit because its stability actually comes from when it comes through this bearing here, this bush. So all you need to do now is release these two screws, take out the retaining clip, you have the sprocket, oops, sorry, these two screws, remove the retaining clip, you have the sprocket in your hand and the chain can come out. So I'll just do that now. There's the sprocket, inside, outside. I don't actually think the sprocket's that bad, to be honest. However, I've got my chain here on the floor. I've laid it out flat. And what you shouldn't be able to do is bend it in the middle like this, look. All the links, hold on, if I can show you what I'm doing. I'm lifting it. This indicates that there's so much wear that you can bend all the links. It's difficult to show it with one hand, but basically the links are all worn out in between each other. So yeah, I can't show it with one hand, but basically you shouldn't be able to move the chain. If I have it like this, you should not be able to move it like that, for example. It's far too much. In fact, that shows it quite well. If you start moving it like this, it's so tight the whole thing should should move, but not like a snake. So yeah, that's worn. Out of interest, I know, because I've got my documents, that I changed this chain 22,000 kilometers ago. It's okay. Could have lasted a bit more, but then again, maybe I didn't oil it enough. Sometimes I do neglect the chain. You know, what am I looking? Well, I've lost the word. Chain maintenance. So there you go. So got that off. Yeah, now it's a case of give it all a clean. Wait for the chain. I might actually. It might be worth at this point taking the rear suspension out. It's only one bolt holding it in at the top, and doing an oil change on that if you really want to. Something that's definitely worth looking at is let's just get this off here. Sorry, I'm really bad with this camera. It's like one-handed and not watching what I'm doing. So if I take the bolt out here, are the needle bearings in here. There's your, you can check to see if there's any extra wear on here. This looks a bit worn down actually. I do have a spare one. If it's better, I'll put it in. Yeah, but you will want to be having a look at the needle bearings in here to see if they're worn or flat, or if they catch, and if so, change them at the same time and give it all a good clean. While I'm here, I'll give it all a clean under there. Look, can't see it, but it's all mucky as bugger. So just had an email saying the postman's turning up with the new chain, so when he's there I'll put that in and show you, but in the meantime I'll give it all a good clean. Bye bye. Well, I have the new chain on. I sort of fitted everything without actually making any videos, but basically all you do is you fit the chain over the front sprocket. You can put the cover back on, and then obviously redo the lower bolt for the suspension, the two dog bone bolts, torquing them up accordingly. I've only put the axle in with the rear sprocket in, just so that the chain doesn't drag on the floor. So the chain is in. Whilst I was there, I did tidy up a little bit. Here's the rear tyre, the new one, the BT46, which I shall now also fit into place. And then once that's in, whoopla, we'll see how things go from there. Once you've established that your wheel bearings are okay, we can go on with putting everything back together. And the first thing we start is the cush bearing, which is one piece. Some bikes have them in separate pieces. So basically, just want to be looking at there's no cracks or rips in this. It doesn't need to be in one piece, and then everything's okay. Then it just sits in here like that, and this piece fits on the inside like there we go. That's on there like that. And yeah, so now I can go ahead with actually fitting the wheel, but I just wanted to show you the cush bearing. This is the final product. New tyre fitted, new chain fitted, chain slack checked at 40 millimeters. No, it's not possible to pull the chain off the back. The old chain, if you remember, I was able to pull it off quite a way. despite being at maximum flexibility at 40mm as well. You know, you can't pull that off the back here. Looks like a new chain, so that shouldn't fool him. Basically, make sure you do your chain alignment checks, check for free movement, do a brake check, clean up, not forgetting to tighten up everything you loosened, check your bolts once more, check that you didn't lose a brake pad whilst you had the brakes out, especially if it's moving quite freely like this is. You might wonder why. The reason being is that I haven't actually pressed the brake pedal yet, and the pads were pressed apart to take the brakes out, so that's why the wheel is moving so freely. And split pin back in, axle tightened up, adjusters tightened, the bolts on the brake anchor rod tightened. So basically just make sure you've got everything, and that's it. So go back to testing station.